Hi, this is Miss Fizone, and this is horizontal shifting of trig functions. All right, so let's do a quick review of just the graph of sine and cosine, because it's really important for you to just be able to graph them like normal. So where does sine start? Sine starts at 0, 0, 0, right? Your y value starts at 0 on the unit circle, and then it goes up to 1, back down to 0, -1, and back to 0. Right? This is all based on that unit circle. Right? Your y values start at 0, go up to 1, back to 0, -1, back to 0. Cosine are our x values. Your x value starts at 1, and then it goes to 0. X value then goes to -1. X value goes to 0, and then back up to 1. So this one looks kind of like a U, or as my students like to say, it looks like a uterus. Okay, so a phase shift. This is a fancy name for a horizontal shift. Okay, so if you have y equals sine of theta minus b, you're shifting b radians. Okay. Now remember, we have parentheses here. When you shift, just like with a parabola, when it's inside, you change the sign. So we can say right? Because if I plug b in, b minus b is 0, sine of 0 is 0. So you always reverse, because when you plug this in, you want the inside to be 0. Okay? So always reverse which way you're going. Okay? So a phase shift is just a fancy way of saying we're going to go back and forth, left and right. Okay. All right, let's start with sine. So let's graph sine of theta plus pi over 2. Okay. So first thing I'm going to do is label my grid. Okay. So what's my amplitude? Nothing there, so it's 1 and -1. Pi over 2. Pi. 3 pi over 2. 2 pi. -pi over 2. -pi. -3 pi over 2. -2 pi. All right, so where are we starting? We are going to start, look on the inside. What kind of shift is this? This is negative, change the sign. -pi over 2 is our starting point. So we're going to go left pi over 2. Okay? So we're going to go to -pi over 2. Now where does sine start? What's sine of 0? Sine of 0 is 0. So we're going to start right here. And if it helps, sometimes what I'll do is I'll make myself a tiny little sketch. It's a sine. Sine looks like that. Just so I kind of remember what I'm doing. So we're starting here, and sine goes up to 1. But instead of starting at 0, 0, we're at -pi over 2, I go up to 1. The next dash, down back to 0, -1, and 0. Right, so there's the sine curve. And then we can continue, right? There's more space on here. So where would this dot be at 2 pi? I went down, now that it goes back up, right? It's based on a circle. And over here, it goes down, back to 0, and back up. So we can kind of continue this graph. Now, what did we just draw? What is this? Let's cover up the left side. That's a cosine. So sine of theta plus pi over 2 is actually equal to cosine of theta. So that's one thing to keep in mind. It can be really tricky with these, because you're thinking it's a sine, but then you graph it and you're like, oh no, I made a mistake, it's cosine. Well, this happens a lot, so pay attention to that. This graph actually equals cosine, right? They're just a 90-degree shift. All right, cosine of theta minus pi over 2. Okay, this time we're shifting pi over 2, but in the opposite direction. So what do you do to the minus? We're going to reverse it. So it's going to be plus pi over 2. So we're going to be starting at pi over 2 this time. All right, 1, -1, pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, 2 pi. And then you can label the other side too. All right, so this time, instead of starting at negative pi over 2, we're going to start at positive pi over 2. Where does cosine start? Cosine starts at 1. And then again, I can make myself a little. I start at 1, I go down to 0, then -1, back to 0. Again, look, it's not quite a full cosine curve, so what I like to do is just get the other side. So if I'm at 1, where would the next dot be? 0. And again, what does this look like? We just drew a sine curve, right? So sine and cosine are really similar, just a shift. Okay? All right, we're going to get a little harder now. You ready? 2 sine of pi over 4. Alrighty. So first off, I'm going to label. We're going up to 2. So 1, 2. Down to -2. Pi over 2. Pi. 3 pi over 2. 2 pi. All right. Now this one's a little harder. Now pi over 4. Is that even on here? It's not. So what I'm going to do is on my grid, I'm actually going to put in red.